All right, hey Ceramics 1, let's talk overglaze. Overglaze has glass particles in it, so it's going to put a layer of colored glass on the outside of your form. It does make it food safe after you apply overglaze, and it comes in a lot of different colors, and that's in these buckets right here. Some of the buckets have a little drip and it says it's drippy, which means you can only apply it to the inside of your pot, because if you put it on the outside, it's just too drippy, it'll run off and stick to the kiln shelf. Before we go ahead and glaze our ceramic pieces, a couple things you need to do. The first thing you need to do is you need to wax the bottom. Waxing the bottom is applying a wax resist to your piece. I put a little bit of wax resist in this ramekin. I have a wax brush, and what I want to do is not just do the bottom, but to do the whole foot so that you create a barrier between the glaze and the kiln shelf. Every single year we have students who don't wax their pots well enough and up high enough, and they stick to the kiln shelf and then we have to break them off. I'm going to wax my whole bottom inside the foot as well. So I don't just stop there, but I need to create a wax barrier on the entire foot. Now, if you accidentally splash wax onto your form, that is very difficult to remove. You would actually have to sand it off. So please be careful applying the wax. You only need a really thin layer. It doesn't need to be thick at all. And this line really does matter in your overall design. If your line is like crooked and wavy and it doesn't look very nice and neat, it will show. Your glaze will only stick to the ceramic, not to the wax, and so it will look not as well crafted. Don't need a lot, just one thin layer is enough. So I'm going all the way around the foot. There we go. Now it just takes a few minutes to dry, so you can set it aside. You need to pour the wax back into the container and wash that out with hot water. And now I need to choose my colors. So you can go to the kind of samples and look at how the overglazes turn out in the kiln. You could choose to do the entire form just one color. You could dip in one color and then dip just the rim. This one is charcoal, and then I dipped it in metallic green. It's having a little bit hard time showing. And since the underglaze or the charcoal underneath was really matte and dark, you can only see a little bit of that metallic green coming through. Or you can choose to be thoughtful about your colors and how they overlap, so that if you dip it in one and then dip it in the other, you can see them kind of overlapping and it creates an interesting pattern. So you can kind of experiment with your glazes and applying them in different ways. You can dip glaze, so I could take this and I could dip it all the way in a pot and back out. That creates like a really even layer on your ceramic, so if you can dip it and it's small enough to fit in the bucket, that's always a good idea. You can also brush glaze on with our brushes over here. You would need to apply at least 2 layers of brush and make sure that it's really well covered. My foot is almost dry. I'm going to give it 1 more minute. One thing that's important to do when you glaze is you need to rinse your bisqueware off really quickly in water. And what that does is it puts some water in the pores of your bisqueware, and so the glaze doesn't soak up too much into your bisqueware. It kind of saturates it really for a very short time, and it also removes any dust that might be on your bisqueware. So I'm just going to rinse this really quick and show you how easily it dries. So I just rinsed it, and you'll notice that it's already drying on my piece. It's that porous and that dry. I have the wax on the bottom, and now I'm ready to dip. For dipping, we use a tool that looks like this. It has prongs that you can hold onto your piece and so that your fingers don't need to get all dirty and it's nice and neat. I'm going to choose to dip this twice. I'm going to dip it in the charcoal and the floating blue. Let's see if I can give you a good view. I'll put it right here. Well, I'll try to cut that out later. All right, so I'm ready to dip. I'm going to dip it in my charcoal. And I've already mixed up this glaze. I'm taking a whisk and I'm whisking the glaze to make sure that the powder and the water are well saturated and it's not separated on the bottom. Once I've whisked it, I'm going to check for consistency. So what I do is I'm looking for the consistency of kind of Pepto-Bismol. It should be kind of creamy. So I'm dipping my finger in and I'm just checking that it stays on my finger and it's not too liquidy. It doesn't rub off too quickly. So it should be thicker than water. Once that is ready, I'm going to take my mug and I'm going to dip the entire thing in. As I pull it out, I dump the glaze out and I let it dry for a little bit. It dries very, very quickly since it's such a porous surface. I'm holding on carefully. And you'll notice that the wax is actually resisting the glaze, making it really, really easy for me to just take my sponge right now and go ahead and clean off the bottom. I shouldn't have any glaze anywhere near the bottom of my piece. Well, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit disappointed because I have that. That means that I got wax there, and that's exactly what I was warning you guys about. If you get wax accidentally on the rest of your form, not just on your foot. So I'm going to have to rinse that part and then sand it to get the wax off and then repaint that little area, which is kind of annoying. But the rest of it looks pretty good. Now when this is done, got the foot wiped off, I'm going to go ahead and release my tool. And you'll notice that the tool has left little prong marks right there, just where the prongs attach to it. So all I do is I dip a finger in that same glaze and I just touch it to the prong mark so that the glaze is going to fill that in. So not a big deal, just filling it in with that little bit. There's some prongs on the inside too. Perfect. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. It doesn't matter if there's like a thicker part right there. It doesn't matter if there's like a texture on it you don't like, because it's all going to melt as glass, and so you're not going to see those variations at all. Now I am going to pause this and sand it and re-dip it before I dip it twice. All right, I fixed it. I'm ready for my second dip. This time I'm just going to dip the rim, not going to dip it all the way in to mix them, so that hopefully I have a little bit of drip up here. Also, having another layer on the rim helps. If I had like 2 layers over the entire thing, that might be too much glaze and I kind of risk it dripping off. So I'm just going to dip the rim. So I'm going to come over here to floating blue. I already gave it a whisk earlier, so I know it's a good consistency. I don't need my special pincher tools because I can just hold it by the base. And actually I think I'm going to hold it by the handle, and I'm going to dip at an angle, so that's kind of fun. Alright, I'm going to let the excess drip off. And let it dry on top there. I think I am pretty happy with that. It's going to be kind of half, a little bit half and half like that. We'll see how it turns out. All right. Once you are done glazing and it looks beautiful, I want you to check your bottom one more time and just make absolutely 100% sure that there's no glaze on the bottom. Because I load the kiln all the time, and I will tell you right now that I am not going to fire yours unless it's clean, because this is very annoying for me to have to wipe off everyone's bottom. And I have a toddler at home. I wipe enough bottoms. All right, so that is my glazed mug. I'm going to set it on the cart, ready for the next firing.